My name is Sal Glesser. My wife and I started Spyderco in 1976. We settled in Colorado in 1978, and we've been in Golden, Colorado ever since. What I do primarily now is product development and some social media, and Eric handles the day-to-day on a daily basis.
I'm Eric Glesser. I work with the design and other aspects of Spyderco. Official part of the company my whole life.
When we first began with Spyderco, we were creating and building knife sharpeners. So we studied how to make things sharp, which is where we think the real knife begins. We designed from the edge out. Then, because I'd been playing with knives a long time, we created what we thought was a new concept in knives. We figured out a way to open up a knife with one hand by putting a hole in the blade. We developed a clip on the side of the knife, which allowed you to eliminate the sheath and clip the knife to the top of a pocket, which gave you more convenient access to the knife. And we just kept going from there.
We're working on hundreds of different knives at any given time, and the knife market is huge. It goes from little knives to big knives and all purposes in between. And so the inspirations across the board. We're not just making pretty pictures and coming out with them. We're still making reliable high performance with great quality and materials, good designs, good designers, still bringing that nice package to the market. But the inspiration is on all different levels across the board. Usually there's a purpose in mind when we create most of the product.
To start with a design, you're drawing something and then you take that piece of paper, we turn it into a plastic model, and we use that plastic model and we refine from there. Once the pattern of the knife is established, then we'll get into the materials. We have to pay attention to the performance of the knife, but we also have to pay attention to where we're going to make it.
Usually the different factories and the different locations around the world have different skills and abilities. Some may be good at this, some may be good at something else, some may work with a material that others don't. There's no two factories that are created equal. And we like that. We like using sources from all around the world. It gives us that variety.
We think of the knife as a tool. So if you're going to use a tool around areas where you have to have a lot of edge retention, then certain steels will work better than others. If you're working around salt water, then there's some steels will work better around salt water. Bigger knives used for chopping or smaller knives used for whittling, it pretty much all starts with the steel that you're going to use, and that's where we start our design.
Usually we try to have materials in the country that we're making the product. If it's American-made product, we usually have an American steel go into that product. It's not a rule and it's not across the board, but for a generality, we try to use the material sourced in that country. And then oftentimes factories are more comfortable with some materials than others, particularly in the steel grinding.
We have a project we call the Mule Team, where we work with different foundries to get a hold of a small quantity of a special steel, and we'll make a fixed blade knife out of that steel using the same pattern all the time, but changing the steel every 3 months.
Testing for the product is very important. People's livelihoods depend on a lot of our product. When it comes to lab testing, I think we have some of the best. We have a lot of information that's computer generated so that we get exact distances and exact weights and great imagery, and we can really break down the testing of that product. And then we do real world testing where we go outside with video cameras and testing equipment, and we do a lot more of real world. Most of it we record and go back and check it, and then we go from there.
I guess it's not all about making money. It's about making good product, caring about what our customer thinks and wants, and we try to serve that market. I must have talked to 50 people today just discussing prototypes, which is we make 30 or 40 new knives every year, and one of the things that we like to do is show prototypes and concept models at shows like this one, where we can get good feedback from knife knowledgeable people.
One of my favorite things is when people tell me about their knife. They pull it out of their pocket and they show me what they've been carrying. There's not a knife that I can't pick up and look at, and I can see their impression on it, whether the way they carried it and scratched the clip to their resharpening skills. I love picking up that knife that consumer's been using that he appreciates, and he shares that with me, and I get to share it back. And that's one of my favorite aspects as well. Just recently, an open discussion we've been having the last year is people taking apart their knives. And I'm sure people that are watching this might remember these discussions online. And we're now going in a new direction to where we'll engineer our knives better for disassembly or aftermarket parts and be more prepared for the customer in the future. That's our job as a supplier. We work for the consumer. And so I have to be involved in listening and knowing what's going on because ultimately the customer is the boss. And we have to be there to perform for them. And so, I enjoy it. I have hours of watching YouTube videos. There's probably a lot of people out there that have made YouTube videos that have no idea that I'm sitting around watching them, but I enjoy them very much. The negativity is there, but I'm not getting that caught up in it. I mean, sometimes, yes, naturally, some of it can bother you, but I like it.
And we have to watch the markets. For example, 10 years ago in England, in the entire UK, they passed laws that changed everything. You weren't allowed to carry a knife that locked. You weren't allowed to carry a knife that had a blade length of more than 3 inches. And so these were new parameters. So we knew that that would probably be a trend in the future, certainly in Europe. And so we started developing slip joint knives for that market. And so a lot of things that we do, we try to look ahead in the doing of it. And so we're not only creating a lot of the new, but we're pretty well into it by the time it becomes mainstream.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the horizon. I'm really excited for the U.S. production. In the last few years, we've really started to overcome some humps in production and quality, and we're getting better all the time. And I love that the U.S. facility is pushing all the time. There's a lot going on, though. We have new products that we're venturing out into for completely new markets. One of the things I'm enjoying, too, is getting the product to the consumer. When I was a kid, it was the brick and mortar store, the mom and pop store. And there were hundreds of them across the country. And you could go into a knife store and talk to somebody. Nowadays, trying to find a knife store anywhere is pretty difficult. I think there's probably less than 50 in the country. And it's gone to internet-based sales, and it's a changing economy and commerce. And I'm still enjoying the fact that we're producing this great product, and we're able to still bring it to the consumer, and through all this evolution. I mean, I'm sitting here at Knife Center, which was our first e-commerce internet dealer. My father jumped on the forums in the 90s. And so we're already always thinking about that future and the direction that our industry is going. And we have to be, or we won't be a part of it.